What is up, everybody? Thank you so much for tuning in. We have a big jam-packed show for you today. Week 4 Jackhammer, interdivisional game. We are playing our rivals, the Seattle Seahawks. You are at the stadium right now. Tell us a little bit about what the energy is like over there. I know it's early. The game's, not for another few hours, but is a tailgate going on? What's going on?
It's early, but the parking lot's already packed. People are starting to get ready. They're ready to come into the stadium. They're starting to line up at the gates. So I think it's going to be a fun crowd today. There's a lot of red, but also a little bit of those Seattle colors in the crowd, which is going to make this a fun atmosphere, I believe.
Yeah, you got to have a few haters there so we could heckle them all throughout. So I'm sure the faithful will be doing their job, making sure those guys don't have a great time. But Jack, we got Jack over there. We obviously know his channel. I'm Sunil. There's a lot to go over, so let's just go into it. I know it's too early to actually get the report for who's in, who's out, but there has been some reports. So let's talk about some of the moves that we know for sure. For sure, Elijah Mitchell is going to be out, right? So I know you were bringing up that Kerryon Johnson wasn't brought up from the practice squad for this game. So that probably means it's going to be a Sermon Cannon, heavy running back core. But what do you envision as far as the running backs with Mitchell out?
Well, it's going to be Sermon and Cannon, but I think you're going to see Jacques Patrick as well. So those are your 3 running backs that are going to be active today. So I would expect it most likely to be Sermon and Patrick as your 2 main running backs. I don't know how much Trenton Cannon is looked at as a really much of a running back option. I think he's kind of at the bottom of that. He's more of a special teams guy. So I would expect to see Sermon get the bulk of the carries today with Patrick being his backup.
Yeah, and I mean we saw last week Juice got a lot more carries than usual too. So I assume we're going to probably see him be pretty active in the running game as well.
Yeah, and I would hope to see him be active in the passing game even more than the running game. See him, this is a game when you watch the way Seattle plays, they're susceptible a little bit to the screens and things like that, and that's where Juszczyk can come in and be a threat is against on those screens. He's a good receiver, but he gives them an option there, which I don't know if you really get that out of the other running backs that are on the roster for today.
Right. Another big addition, or somebody that was on the fence. It looks like George Kittle is going to be a go for this game. Talk about, obviously we know what he does as far as a leader for this offense and this team overall, but huge in the running game as well, especially with Mitchell out. If he was out as well, this whole offense looks different, especially that running game. So talk a little bit about what him coming back and how you think he's going to be used coming off a little bit of an injury.
Well, he's a big part of everything that they do on their offense, from run blocking to his receiving ability. Again, in this game, I would expect to see a lot of play action, rollouts and screens and those kind of things to beat this defense. Seattle really is a team that wants to force you to work the ball down the field, somewhat like the 49ers do. So they're susceptible to those underneath passes. And that's what Kittle brings, right? Is he brings you that run after the catch ability. It's a little bit easier to get him the ball sometimes than it is to get Deebo Samuel or Brandon Ayuk the ball on those plays. So expect him to get a good number of catches underneath. And, he's a guy that's a gamer, so I would expect him to play pretty heavy minutes today.
That was going to be my follow-up question. So you don't think he's going to just be a decoy? You think he's actually going to be involved in the passing attack and the overall offensive strategy?
I think so. I think that's partly why they're kind of pushing to get him into this game and wanting him to play so bad.
Excellent. So that was kind of the main, question marks on the offensive side. Let's move over to the defensive side. Obviously, it's looking like Norman is going to be out for this game. So Mosley is there on one side. Who do you envision being the starter on the other opposite side of Mosley at corner?
Just going based off of the names that Kyle Shanahan presented during his press conference this week I believe it was on Friday, and the order in which he went with those, I think that there's a pretty good chance that it's going to be Drake Kirkpatrick starting opposite of him today, which is an interesting choice considering Lenore. I understand he's a rookie and he's had some issues, but are we'll get into that as we go through. But having these two rookies and not playing them and bringing in guys off the street to replace to fill in instead, that's an interesting situation for me.
Well, I'm interested in hearing what you think about this because K'Wan Williams is also out, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, do you think that Lenore moves into that nickel corner, or do you think they bring Jimmy Ward down to do that and maybe bring Hufanga in as a safety to make up for K1 being gone?
Yeah, that's all to be seen. I mean, again, going back to what we heard in the press conferences when Shanahan was asked about who's going to be replacing K'Wan Williams, he never mentioned anything about Jimmy Ward. He never even really mentioned Diamond Lenore. He said it's going to be either Buster Screen or Dante Johnson. So again, it's going to be interesting to see if that's maybe a little bit of gamesmanship, just not to put it out there. But if it's Buster Screen, you really got to start wondering what the 49ers have done over the offseason to get this team ready for 2021.
Right. Absolutely. Yeah, and this isn't the game that you want to have a cornerback room or secondary in flux with two receivers that they have there. Tyler Lockett was like kind of questionable throughout the week, but it looks like he is going to be playing. But I expect a heavy dose of DK Metcalf, a heavy dose of Tyler Lockett. So the secondary definitely needs to be on their P's and Q's. But probably, the biggest news I would say this week was Maurice Hurst was actually brought up from injured reserve, and he is going to be playing this game. So tell us a little bit about one. Obviously, he's been off for a long time, hasn't been able to be practicing and things like that. But what do you expect his workload to be during this game, and what do you feel like he could bring to this defensive line that, let's be honest, Jack, hasn't been performing up to speed?
It's going to be interesting to see who they sit as a result of this. I think if Hurst is brought up and he's back on the active roster now, and if he's active today, who's going to sit? Is it going to be Contavious Street? Is it going to be Zach Kerr? I would venture to guess that it's going to be Zach Kerr would be the person that stays down, that doesn't dress today, if that's the case and they do play Hurst. And I think they're just looking for maybe a little bit more athleticism at that spot, to be able to generate a little bit more rush on the quarterback and those types of things is the only reason I could see that change.
Do you think that Hurst can? I know he plays more on the outside, but do you think that he can help out with this run? This run defense that has been pretty porous, to say the least, for the 49ers.
I don't know if there's anybody on this defensive line that can really help with the run, and let me explain what I mean by that. When they go into their 4-man front, where they just have, they usually do that when they have two safeties deep, and when they go into that front, what happens is those tackles are split out so wide that it's just a real easy double team for the center and guard on one side and the guard on tackle on the other side to just double those guys and get a really big push. And we've seen that. It doesn't matter if it's Javon Kinlaw or who they have in there, because Kinlaw is the one that everybody thinks of as far as being the run stuffer, right? But he gets moved. He gets moved in that situation as well. So I don't think it's really a personnel thing as much as it is just the way that they align makes it easy to be doubled, and then for them to come off those double teams to then come off and get upfield to the linebackers. And part of that is because the 49ers linebackers don't fill the gaps quickly. They're reading and reacting, and by the time they're reacting, the guys coming off the double team and catching it about 3 or 4 yards down the field usually.
I love the faithful in the back. Be as loud as you guys want, guys. Keep the energy going. We're going to need it during this game. Great. So, we talked a little bit about, what we know as far as who's going to be in and who's going to be out. But let's get a little bit more into the details of the game. This is obviously a really big game, Jack, for both teams. First NFC West competition. So this is going to be a big one moving forward, painting out the playoff picture and so on and so forth. Seattle is coming in limping, right? 1-2 record. Definitely probably a little bit of desperation mode over there in Seattle. Haven't been playing their best ball. However, we know what this offense is capable of. Their running game isn't, top 5, but it isn't bad with Chris Carson there. And then they obviously have a mobile quarterback in Russell Wilson and also, really good receivers there. I don't want to really talk about that as much as we just know that they could put up points. That is something that is a little bit fearful for, I think, the faithful, knowing that this offense at sometimes can sputter, and especially at beginning of games, not come out quick. What do you think this offense needs to do to be able to give the defense at least some kind of break against this kind of high-powered offense, and to keep up with pace with Russ and what he can do with this offense as well?
Yeah, I think we every week pretty much I'm going to say that they need to get the run game going, but based off of what we've seen so far this year, I don't have a lot of faith that they're going to be able to get that run game going. So let's just assume in this game they're not going to get the run going like they used to do. Let's just assume they're going to be what they've been through the first 3 weeks of the season. And in that case, it's going to be Garoppolo having to control the ball, and that's why I would like to see the play action rollouts. The little easy check downs to the where they have the Kittle in the flat with a receiver coming over the top that they can hit. Like to see those kind of things. And the screens. I know that people want to see the ball go down the field, but those are just extensions of the run game that can really help get the game on track for the 49ers and move the sticks. I just think they need to pick up some first downs, get the clock rolling, and that's going to help out their defense. And obviously they've got to score more than 7 points in the first half, and I think that'll help them.
One thing that I've noticed, Jack, and you could correct me if I'm wrong, is it seems like Jimmy does better when the offense is sped up. Like, he's been scoring in the 2-minute offense, 4-minute offense at the end of halves, both halves. Do you think that Shanahan might catch on to that? And would you be surprised if they sped this offense up, did a few no huddles, or at least stayed in that 2-minute, 4-minute type offense to keep Jimmy from having to overanalyze the field, I guess?
No, I think it'd be a good idea. You need to change some things up. I think I'd like to see him, maybe do a not necessarily a 2-minute drill type of thing, but where they're going no huddle, getting up to the line of scrimmage quicker, letting him kind of dictate what the play is. Having a couple of plays called ahead of time, right, where he's able to get to the line of scrimmage. They run a play. Based off of that, he already knows what the next play is. If the clock's still rolling, get up to the line of scrimmage. It doesn't have to be we're going to go right now, but get up there and just dictate it from the line. Kind of like what you used to see, like Peyton Manning used to do back in the day, right? Where he'd get up there and it was kind of, he'd be at the line looking everything over, calling it out, and he'd be up there for 20 seconds, but it was still putting pressure on the defense not to be able to adjust.
Yeah, I think it's really, really imperative that they do something in that first drive to at least get some kind of points on the board, or at least get into the Seahawks territory versus the 3-and-outs or just like the 1 first downs that we've seen in these previous games. One of the hot questions, Jack, in the comment section is, how is Trey Lance going to be utilized in this offense? I believe Tubular Bike asked, do you think over or under 10 snaps for Trey Lance with this offense?
I'm going to say unless the offense is just completely stagnant again and it's falling apart, I think you're going to see under 10 snaps from Lance. I just don't see. Again, he's the backup, and Shanahan, reiterated that a number of times this week in the press conferences. I think, but unless the 49ers offense is just completely falling on its face or Garoppolo is falling on his face, put it more that way, I don't see him getting in the game. I don't see a situation where Shanahan's going to replace Garoppolo like we saw, let's say the offense is playing the way they were last week in the first half. I don't see Shanahan pulling them out because I don't. Shanahan has mentioned it a couple of times. A lot of other people have too. It's not just Garoppolo that's causing the issues on the offense. There's a lot of other things that are going on, and a lot of that starting up front with the lack of movement on the offensive line, and that's what's causing their inability to run the ball. And that's kind of stagnating the offense as a whole.
I want to put it out there, Jack. People were killing me saying you don't know football when I said I don't think that Shanahan's going to use Trey Lance that much. He's going to treat him like a backup quarterback, and it's going to be the Jimmy show. And I was getting crushed. Oh, it was on Grant's show. I just want to say, hey, if he hasn't used them up until this point, this is the game that supposedly everything he's been holding back he has to do. If it's not in this game, it's Jimmy G for the rest of the season.
Yeah, and I don't disagree with you. I think there's a you got to look at Shanahan's history. Shanahan's history is that he sticks by his quarterbacks, right? He did it last year when Nick Mullins was struggling. I know that it wasn't like they had a better backup on the bench, but he stuck with them while people were calling for anybody and everybody else to replace him. And there's things with Trey Lance that I think that he has questions about, and we'll just leave it at that, and we'll see what happens today.
Yeah. Well, let's move to the other side of the ball because unfortunately, it's not like we have no question marks on the other side as well. I think D'Amico Ryans had a pretty difficult game against Green Bay. It seems like he struggles with in-game adjustments. Week to week, it seems like he knows how to tweak, but in the game, it seems like there is some difficulties for him. With a guy like Russ, that doesn't bode well. So what does D'Amico Ryans need to do with this offense, knowing that the secondary is going to be kind of a makeshift thing? Defensive line isn't performing at the level that they need to. Linebackers also not performing at the level that they need to. Really only seems like maybe the safeties are kind of doing what, playing at a decent level. I wouldn't even say, a high level. But what does D'Amico Ryans need to do to be able to call a game that gives the 49ers a chance to be in this game throughout the whole game?
This is the toughest game that he's really had to go against. I mean, I understand Green Bay, but even against Green Bay with Aaron Rodgers, you pretty much had Aaron Rodgers as Devontae Adams to shut down, and they couldn't do it. Now today you've got Russell Wilson, you've got DK Metcalf, and you've got Tyler Lockett. Those two are combining to average 173 yards a game. Lockett's only had 4 passes thrown his way this year that haven't been a completion. And then you take that out of it, and then you have he's their offensive coordinator up in Seattle is an old Sean McVay guy, so they run a ton of 2 tight ends. They usually start the games with 2 tight ends, 2 receivers, and a single running back in the backfield. And those guys are really good underneath receivers as well. Disley and Gerald Everett, they're really good tight ends. So that whole thing, that from the passing game standpoint, they're going to be in tough, I think, in this one with the issues that they're having in the secondary, because the only way you're going to be able to, I think, match up is to play that 2 high safety, which puts the 49ers in a bad run defense situation with only 2 underneath, or 4 underneath, excuse me. And so if they have, if they're running in that 4 down lineman look, it's usually an easy 5 yards for offenses. And Seattle's run the ball really well this year. I think they're averaging over 5 yards a carry. So, from Ryan's standpoint, I think he needs to be able to get pressure on Wilson. That's key to kind of take him out of his game, and we've seen teams be able to do that because the Seattle offensive line struggles at times. So if you can put pressure on Wilson and not let him throw the ball, maybe that's going to help you out. And then on top of that, they need to be able to, when they're rushing Wilson, they need to be able to he needs his guys to be able to stay in their rushing lanes, because that's usually when Wilson beats you, is when you're rushing and one of your guys breaks his lane and kind of starts to freelance, and that's what usually opens up the gap for him to make a play. So this week, if I was D'Amico Ryans, I would play Samson Ebukam over D Ford.
Wow.
And the reason for that, I know that he's not going to be the pass rusher that Ford is, but he's a better contained guy. He's gonna do a better job of keeping Wilson in the pocket, and he's probably going to do a better job of defending the run as well. So I would like to see more of Samson Ebukam in this game, and we'll see how they play it.
That you did a great segue into what I was going to ask you next. This defense was supposedly going to be our strength. There was no doubt in anybody's mind this was going to be a top 5 defense. There was no doubt, right? This defensive line was going to be, top 3 defensive line. It's not looking like that, at least through 3 weeks of the season. Who are the players, Jack, that you need to see really step up in this game to give the 49ers the best opportunity to get a big divisional victory?
I think on the defensive side, when you're looking at guys that need to step up, we're all focused on the defensive line, and it goes back to what I've been talking about. When they go into this defense where they have the 4 down linemen and everybody's getting doubled, that really requires the linebackers and the safeties and the corners to be able to fill gaps, because when they're in that situation, there's almost always a hole in the gaps. And whether it's Fred Warner stepping up and making a play and being aggressive and making the stop in the hole, or Azeez Al-Shaair, or what's the other one, number 36? I'm blanking on his name right now. You know who that is?
The Sully, I forget.
The safety
it's the safety
that's
Marcel Harris.
Marcel Harris. There you go.
There
Thank
you
you. Yeah. So either Harris, Alshire, or Warner, they've got to be able to step up and fill those holes. And even there's going to have to be sometimes where that's going to be either Warner, not Warner, but Tart or Hurst, or not Hurst, Ward.
Ward.
Yeah. And sometimes it's a cornerback. It just depends. I mean, when you watch the game, you'll see different guys that have to fill gaps at different times. But those second level guys have got to do a better job of stepping up and shutting down the run. And all those things make it tough when it comes to play action and what have you. But they've got to get after Wilson, not let him beat them. And if they can keep Wilson in the pocket and force him to play from there and not run around, I think they might have a chance to slow him down.
I'm a little bit harder, I think, than you are right now, Jack. I think there's two guys on this defense that need to really step up, and those are our two superstars on this defense. That is Nick Bosa and Fred Warner. Both have been inconsistent, to say the least. It seemed like Bosa last week, with just a tight end chip, was taken completely out of the game. I want to see an Aaron Donald-esque type performance from Nick Bosa, where he is dominating this offensive line, because this offensive line, let's be honest, isn't the best offensive line. Even though the running game has been, efficient, I think that in the passing game they can get to Russ, because he does tend to hold the ball a little bit longer than a guy like Aaron Jones. So we need to see, I think, Nick Bosa be the star of this defensive line and actually get those 4 or 5 sacks that we haven't seen this defense be able to get. And we need to see All-Pro Fred Warner be All-Pro Fred Warner. Pinor is, going through it right now in the chat, making really great points. I think that Fred Warner has not been one of the best linebackers in the game, and we expect him to be the best middle linebacker in the game. And a lot of 49er faithful are giving him, excuses here, there, and all this kind of stuff. But you got paid to be the best player. No excuses. And I said this on Rob's show last week. This defense is pass or fail. You either dominate or you fail in my books, because of how this defense was built. This defensive line is pass or fail. You either dominate or we fail, because our defense cannot be good unless this defensive line dominates. So I think we need to see guys like Nick Bosa have a huge game. Eric Armstead. We can't just be they almost got to the quarterback. They have to get there. Otherwise, the rest of this defense is exposed.
Yeah, and I don't disagree with you. I think that's a strong take. It's a little bit stronger. We're on the same page a little bit. Your take's a little bit stronger than mine on that. But yeah, we're on the same boat. Like I was saying with the run defense, that's where Warner has to step up. When you watch him play, he's a step slow. It seems like all the time getting to the back and he's usually not even blocked. It's just a matter of getting to the hole, and it seems like it's taking him a minute to get there. So yeah, Warner's got to step up. You've got to see Bosa's got to get a sack or two today. Without Bosa being a disruptive force, the 49ers are going to have a tough time. Eric Armstead, if he's playing inside, has got to be able to win his battles too. But when they're winning those battles, they've got to do it within the strength, the structure of the defense. They can't be freelancing, because that's where you'd open up things for Wilson to beat you.
Right. Yep. Now, Kyle Shanahan. There has been a lot of criticism towards Shanahan as far as the type of game plan that he'd had last week. Some people are putting it squarely on his shoulders why this team isn't performing at the level that maybe their expectations were coming into this season. What do you need to see out of Kyle Shanahan? And I know you're a lot less emotional about these type of things, which is great, which is why I like hearing from you about this. But I think you have criticized Shanahan as well this season. What are some of the changes that you want to see him do in this game plan to let you feel more confident in that he's learning from maybe some mistakes earlier this season?
Well, he's got to find a way to be able to beat this odd front that everybody's throwing at him, right? Everybody's coming out in the run game, especially, right? He's coming out with what teams are doing is they're basically stacking the middle. It's called a bear front, where they put one man over a guy over the center, one over, and then the defensive tackles are over each guard, and then they have ends standing up on the outside, and their linebackers are able to play free in the middle. And right now, the 49ers aren't showing the ability to beat that. And they need to show something. They need to be able to he needs to have a plan to defeat that this week. He hasn't been able to do it yet. I understand that some of that is because of his personnel up front not winning, but he's got to come up with some kind of plan to beat that, whether it's, by utilizing the run off tackle to hit that, be able to hit that bubble quick and get, maybe running more to the left side than he has been, behind Tomlinson and Trent Williams, because that's your strength right now, is on that side of the ball compared to the right side. Not that's not a knock on McGlinchey, but that's more of a knock on Brunskill. He's got to come up with something, whether it's that or it's the utilization of the screen game and whatnot to get this offense moving. He's got to get the chains going earlier in the game, and you can't keep blaming it on
Jimmy.
Yeah, on Jimmy, lack of execution, what have you. Go back to the Eagles game, and that might be a good starting point, because if you look at the beginning of the Eagles game, they struggled with running the ball, but there was a couple of screen calls that were in there early. The first one, Garoppolo made a bad throw, and so Juszczyk wasn't able to catch it because it was down around his knee. But the second one, to Samuel, both those plays were wide open, and one was a bad ball, the other one was dropped. So maybe do that. You've got to do something. He's got to figure out a way, because his offense can't keep doing what they've been doing the last 2 weeks.
Another thing, Harold Murillo made a good point. This might be one of those games that comes down to the last seconds because of how maybe not necessarily evenly matched, but also just the way that these teams play each other. Clock management. Can you speak a little bit towards how you feel like Shanahan has done with clock management and what you need to see out of him if you think that there's room for improvement there?
He's been okay with that this year. I haven't had a whole lot of issues with it, even on Sunday night. I understand that you hear people saying, they've got to run the clock down right there before they score, but who knows? Maybe if they don't snap that ball in rhythm, maybe Green Bay's making an adjustment, or who knows what's going to happen at that point, right? The issue that I have with what they did at the end of the game is, once you scored that touchdown, you now come out after that and you kick the ball into the end zone. That doesn't take any
time.
Blasting the ball. Yeah, it doesn't take any time off the clock. Instead, a much better choice would have been to drive that ball down the field. It's like a power kick or whatever you want to call it. It's like kick it like it's a line drive, right? Where it hits about the 20-yard line. Yeah, if it hits about the 20-yard line and starts bouncing, it's got to be fielded by the return man, and so that's going to start the clock rolling, and they're probably going to take off 5+ seconds during that time. So there's a lot of little things like that could have been done even after the score. But other than that, I think Shanahan has done a pretty good job of managing the game and managing the clock. I thought he did a good job against Philadelphia with that. In Detroit, I thought it was fine too. The only issue there was George Kittle couldn't handle an onside kick at the end of the game, and that really kind of caused all kinds of things to snowball.
Got it. See, you are the beacon of understanding and beacon of just non-emotional takes. I like it. Before we get into predictions, Jack, I do want you to put maybe in perspective what the levity of this game. And what I mean by that, it's pretty hard to say must-win victory in week 4. But with the way this NFC West is looking,
it's must-win.
With what Arizona and the Rams have done, how important is this game, especially knowing what's coming up next week for the 49ers? And let's play, scenarios. Let's kind of project forward. If this is a loss for the 49ers, what would this mean to this team moving forward?
Yeah, real quick, before I answer that one, can I go back to your last question about Shanahan
Please.
And what he needs to do in order to win today? The
Absolutely.
One thing that I'm talking about all these underneath throws and the screens and that kind of stuff. The other thing that he needs to do is he needs to call some shot plays. And I'm not talking about necessarily like the ball that he called for George Kittle down the middle of the field. I'm talking about, maybe like, where they run
Sherfield in a go route.
Ayuk, Sherfield on a go route, or even like Juszczyk or Kittle on their leak routes that they run. The play action where he kind of has a half roll to one side and the guy comes out and he's kind of on. They usually end up wide open, right, when they run that kind of stuff. If they can get into, he's got to spread this defense out. And I know that everybody blames that on Garoppolo, and he definitely has his part of it. But when you watch the film especially from Sunday night, there's just so much of everything, like the routes and everything are so congested inside. And you can't even blame it on Garoppolo when there's no route that takes a defender past 10 or 15 yards down the field. So I want to see him maybe try to stretch these guys a little bit, especially if they're able to if he sees the protection is holding up well enough, let's stretch them a little bit. Let's throw the ball down the field and see if you get, even if it's an incompletion, maybe you get a break and it's a pass interference or whatnot. Look what happened with, Green Bay. They did it 3 times on Sunday night and got pass interference calls out of it. That was a free 81 yards for their team. So there's that point there. So going back to your question, though, as far as how big is this game for the 49ers, this game's huge. This is a huge game for both teams because the team that loses this game today is in last place in the NFC West. And so if the 49ers lose today, they're 2-2. They will be in last place. They're going to in the NFC West. They're going to have lost a game in their division to Seattle, so they're going to be a game behind Seattle. They've already lost to Green Bay, so there's 2 games in the NFC that they'll have lost, and those are the ones that all at the end of the year that's all the tiebreaker stuff. So this is a huge game for the 49ers, and it's a huge game for Seattle too, because if the 49ers can win today, that they bury Seattle, I think, in a lot of ways, because that puts Seattle 2.5 games behind everybody in the NFC West.
Right. And I look at it as this is a big statement game for Kyle Shanahan and this team, because a lot of people are looking at the 2-1 record and seeing, hey, the 49ers were just 40 seconds away from, a victory. They were able to, if the defense was able to make one stop and so on and so forth, like just we're this close, right?
Yeah.
But this game, I think, lets us know if the 49ers record is based off of the level of competition or based off of the quality of the team that they are. They have been able to get close victories against teams that not many people think are contenders, that are rebuilding and things of that nature. They had Green Bay, where they were on paper much better than, because of the injuries that Green Bay was going through and on the offensive line and in the secondary. And they ended up dropping that game, although be a close game. This is another game against a team where people expect them to be a playoff caliber team. If they go out and lay another egg, Jack, I think this is a big, big statement as to what this 49er team actually is. And moving forward, what we can expect as far as how far this team can go, playoff bound or Super Bowl bound.
Yeah, you're 100% right. This is you're going into week 4 now. You've had 3 games. That's usually when teams can kind of they're still trying to get their feet underneath them. But around week 4, week 5, that's when you've got to be able to step up and you've got to start showing who you are. And this week and next week are 2 games to do that. They've got to come out and win these next 2 games. They need to get to 4-1, I think. If they can get the 4-1 in this next 2 weeks, that puts them in a really good position in the NFC West, even with all the injuries that they're having in the secondary, and they should be getting some of those guys back as the season goes along. They just really need to show that they, especially offensively, they need to show that they're the team that everybody thinks that the 49 when they think of Kyle Shanahan, and they need to be able to somehow figure out how to do this on defense, because I think DeMeco Ryans is in tough on this one.
I agree, man. A lot to look forward to. So before we get you out of here, Jack, because I know you have a really busy day over there. By the way, the sun's shining on you. You look beautiful, my man. So I do want to get your take as far as, let's go with what your expectations are of this game, and then lead that into what your prediction is for this game.
Yeah, I expect to see the 49ers defense struggle with Russell Wilson. When you look at this game, you have a 49ers, a Seattle run offense that's been really good, going up against a 49ers run defense that hasn't been all that good. That's a plus that's in Seattle's favor. You've also got a 49ers secondary that's beat up and going up against a really good quarterback here and against some really good weapons on the other side of the field. So I think the 49ers are going to allow some movement, definitely there, and I think that's really going to be the difference in this game. I do expect the 49ers offense to be able to show some improvement of their own. But I see this game ending up with Seattle winning 27-24, somewhere in that ballpark.
Wow, I thought I was only going to be the pessimistic one in this game. So, I've been the beacon of positivity, Jack, through the whole offseason. Everybody was like, oh, his optimism, it must be fake. It really wasn't. I believed everything that I said this whole offseason. Now I've seen this team play. For me to believe that the 49ers can come out of here with a victory, that's me believing that this secondary can somehow stop 2 really good receivers. Just seeing them not be able to stop 1 really good receiver, that's me believing that the 49ers now can actually, their defensive line and linebacker core can stop the running game, which I haven't seen them do all season. And this defensive line actually be able to stop a quarterback and sack them multiple times. They couldn't do that with a stationary quarterback in Goff, let alone a mobile quarterback in Russell Wilson.
Yeah,
I'm in Lakers on my mind right now.
that's
And then
okay.
on the flip side, now all of a sudden I need to believe that Jimmy Garoppolo, without his starting running backs, can all of a sudden now be who the ball shoulders is on, and all of a sudden turn into this passing down the field thrower and all this kind of stuff. To me, it's just way too many things that I haven't seen need to happen for this team to win. I do believe this team's record is more of a product of the level of competition versus the caliber of the team. I think they've been all close games, and when the ball falls for the 49ers, they end up winning those games. When it doesn't, like it did in the Green Bay game, they end up losing. I also believe that it will be a one-score type of game. I think it's going to be 24-17. The 49ers do end up dropping this game with Seattle winning. The 49ers will be 2-2 going into the Arizona game. And I think that means that Kyle Shanahan will now have to answer some pretty difficult questions, because I think it's going to be a stagnant offense. And now the Trey Lance type of calls are going to get louder and louder, especially in the stadium, if the 49ers aren't scoring come that third quarter.
Yep.
Did we lose you, Jack?
I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
I lost you for a second, but I didn't hear quite the end of your.
The end is, I think that if what I expect to happen is the first half, the 49ers offense is still sputtering. And in that second half, Levi Stadium and the 49er faithful are going to be chanting Trey's name. And Kyle Shanahan's going to have to make a pretty tough decision in starting next week, whether or not Jimmy is still the starter against Arizona.
Yeah, I'm with you. We'll see how it goes. I would like to see the 49ers somehow pull this out. I know you would too. If they can pull this game out, it's going to be a major win, and it could really be a turning point in their season. So there's so much going on. I know we're both pessimistic on this game as far as who we think is going to win. You know, Pioneer came in here and he said it's going to be 34-24 Seattle. That's a score that, you know, given the offense that we've seen from Seattle, could definitely occur. So it's going to be a fun NFC West division game today.
And Jack, I think both of us can be on the record saying the 49ers on paper are a better team than the Seattle Seahawks. It's just they haven't performed up to the level that they need to. And for us to believe that all of a sudden this is the game where they're going to be able to perform, I think, at least I could speak for myself, I just don't see it happening because I haven't seen it in the last 3 weeks. So just for it to turn on this game, I don't know.
Yeah. No, and it's going to be interesting because here's one thing to think about as we get ready to head out today. Russell Wilson's never lost 3 games in a row. He's on a 2-game losing streak. He's never lost 3. At the same time, Jimmy Garoppolo's never lost 2 games in a row. He's never lost 2 starts back to back. So this is going to be an interesting game because one of those guys is going to lose, and it's going to be, it's going to be somebody. Something's going to give this week, and it's going to be one of those 2 going down. Let's hope that it's Russell Wilson.
Yeah, I would love to be wrong. Like, I will come on this show, or we got a show on Monday, and I'll be the first one to be like, I was wrong. Yes, don't listen to my takes. But with that being said, Jack, I know you're at the stadium. Everybody should be following his Twitter because Jack is going to be tweeting throughout the whole game. Anything else that you want to leave the fans with, Jack?
No, go ahead and follow my Twitter today. There'll be some updates there, or jump on 49ers.pressdemocrat.com. Once again, that's 49ers.pressdemocrat.com. The first time I didn't think, wasn't that clear. But, and the reason I say that is because I'll be doing a live vlog from there too. So there might be a little bit more updates or a little bit more in-depth updates there just because I'm able to use more characters. So
awesome. And guys, for everybody else that's listening right now, right after the game on my channel, we are going to be doing a live call-in show. It's called Sound Off with the 49er Faithful. It is your chance to sound off on the game. Hopefully it is a victory, but if Jack and I are right, unfortunately, it may be a loss. So there's going to be a lot to get off your chest either way. Jack, the sun is shining. You could feel the energy already with just the few people that were passing you by during this show. I want you to enjoy it. Everybody else enjoy it. Jack, your final words leaving for the faithful.
No, get ready for a fun game. Buckle up. It's going to be a long 3 hours regardless. I don't think either team's going to blow the other one out here, and just be ready for this to be a 3 hour dogfight and see who wins, and then come back on after the game and watch Sunil take your calls, and then join us on Monday for our show when we kind of wrap this thing up on Monday evening.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Guys, everybody be safe, have fun, stay hydrated, and go Niners.
That's right. Right. I forgot.